Hey, it's News from Heaven, and today we're going to talk all about the collective energy field of spirits. Which is fine. I mean, I'll talk about that with you guys, but I don't really want to talk about the collective energy field of spirits because that's not what's really going on in my life right now. What I want to talk about actually is the stuff that's getting to me day to day. You know, I am concerned about a couple of things that are coming up, and that's kind of weighing me down. I have some lingering worries about whether my life has taken the right path, or even am I valuable as a human being, or is life even good or not? I have recurring things from the past that are bothering me. I can't seem to kick my bad habits. I am struggling to find a sense of worth and purpose. That's what's going on for me. And more, and things I forgot to mention that's just going on and dragging me down. And that's what I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about some weird collective something spiritual way out here near those slanty lines. Well, what if that's actually the same thing? What if our interface with this spiritual world is the key to unlocking the mystery of why is there so much problematic content in our own minds, and how can we get out from under it? That's what we're going to explore today. This is from Swedenborg's Journal of Spiritual Experiences. You can check it out for yourself. This is number 152, and it is entitled, where do you think we got that title from? And did we think it up in a lab? About the collective energy field of spirits. So whoever translated this gave us that. About the collective energy field of spirits. What can this collective energy field tell us about our psychology? Why does it matter? It's certainly difficult to understand what the collective field of spirits is, and what their impact upon human minds is, without being informed of how spirits are differentiated most distinctly into kinds and species, and how their energy, which creates that field, responds to and thus guides every single thought and mental image in a human being. That is one sentence, and man, did things get intense fast. So right here, we're introduced to this. Sure, we got this weird old collective field, but here we have an impact on the human mind. And while this could be a curiosity to me, this ain't no curiosity. This is the thing I'm trying to manage, my human mind. So if these are connected, I want to know about it. And by the end, we're getting a field that responds to and thus guides every single thought and mental image in a human being. This was the great illumination of what consciousness is that Swedenborg underwent, which was very surprising to him at first, but in the end allowed him to have a new way to approach life that you couldn't even measure compared to the old way. It was liberating. It freed him from all the things that were previously dragging him down, and enabled him to get pen to paper and equip us with his insights to be able to do the same. This was in his journal to himself, but it's all there for us to pull out, metabolize, and then use. So what can we learn about the collective energy field? The relation of human minds to the collective field of spirits is no different from that of the air, which is the grosser atmosphere and related to hearing, compared to the ether or purer atmosphere related to sight, or the dense clouds around the earth compared to the clear and serene region above. I don't know whether there's a modern analog to some kind of grosser atmosphere related to hearing. Do sound waves travel differently than light waves, this ether or purer atmosphere related to sight? I don't know. I don't think it matters too much. The point of the metaphor, this is the simplest one he breaks it down in. The dense clouds around the earth compared to the clear and serene region above. So somehow we're going to be able to take, here we are living on the earth. Here we are under day or week-long cloud cover here. But up here, if you've ever had that airplane experience, everything is serene and cloudless. It is a sunny day every day once you get up there. So he's saying human minds to the collective field of spirits is like what? Like we're in the clouds here, and the collective field of spirits is right there. Okay? So we know we're a bit cloudy, right? We were just demonstrating that on this page here. But how's this collective field of spirits doing in in the year, what is it, 17, let's see if it says it at the end. Nope, don't read that. 1750-something-ish. The energy field of spirits, it's probably pretty awesome because it's full of spirits, and spirits are great, right, and powerful. And the energy field of spirits is now so corrupted that whatever flows from the more inward heaven into their realm, which constitutes the lowest heaven, becomes so distorted that whatever is communicated does not become known at all, but all in the least messages stream into human minds with an entirely opposite content. Big sentence. And even if it's not too many words, it's a lot of meaning. What we want to first look at is, this is early in Swedenborg's works. This is just in the hundreds of entries. So he actually changes some of his labeling of things as he goes. So, for example, he'll talk about, spirits in the lowest heaven, whereas later he'll sometimes call those angels, or he'll talk about the world of spirits. It's a little bit different, so you can get some combinations you don't always get. But also, the lowest heaven he's describing here, I think it's 1757, so this would probably be prior to that, we have something called the Last Judgement, which was this restructuring of the spiritual world. And hopefully this is driving home why that's significant. Because if it is, as Swedenborg asserts, that human consciousness is actually the pinpoint of consciousness that we experience as our individual own, is actually pulled from this cloud, like this larger collective that has all these different parts in it, and the just like the cloud, lower levels of the atmosphere and the higher levels of the atmosphere make one atmosphere. So it is that our collective psyches and the spiritual world is one consciousness generating machine, that we're breathing the same air. So if the air is polluted, it's polluted, and everybody pays the price because it diffuses out. So there was this giant restructuring. God was trying to plug in this cosmic air purifier through the Last Judgment, and in that, one of the main things was the sorting out of this. It was called lowest heaven, but it was there was a lot of minds and hearts there that didn't have anything heavenly in them, that were clogging up the pathways that consciousness was supposed to go down. Have you ever seen this show before? Do you know what I'm talking about? If you haven't, it's getting weird fast, and that's part of the brand. You might as well experience that right now. Suffice to say, if there's something in your spinal cord that prevents the stuff from the brain getting to the rest of the body, we're in big trouble. Same thing with heaven. If there's something clogging it up, the rest of us suffer for that. But all in the least messages stream into human minds with an entirely opposite content. So you have heaven is up top, right? You have the highest levels of heaven up here that are getting their messaging, pretty direct from God. That they have opened in the right way, that they can tune into this. And then from that, it's able to move down into this spiritual level of heaven, right? And in this one, we're saying that this natural level of heaven was polluted enough that when something great comes out of God, and it comes into here to try to be something useful here, and then it tries to come here, final destination, us, actually there was a complete reversal of the message, so that what we end up with, instead of being whatever that is sustenance and insights and the ability to produce love, compassion, everything that we would consider heavenly in us, by the time it gets to us, it's the opposite. It is the ego impulses, it is the bickering and the negativity. It is everything that we were just talking about here, all this negative stuff. If there's a message coming from the truth that says, don't worry about it, don't worry about who you are fine. Don't worry about how your life is going, I'm taking care of that. Don't worry about your relationship to other people and are we competitive or collaborative. There's going to be a way that we can all actually be so glad that each other are around. That's the truth. But instead, we end up with all this falsity because we've got this, what happened in between? The collective energy field of spirits. At least back in that day, which is what that really is the hell side of consciousness up way higher than it should be. It should be more like here, so that we can kind of pick and choose rather than be bombarded all the time. So that's not so good. Oh yeah, by the way, we're getting a handy dandy point system here. So that was point number 1. What does that lead us to? Such is that field at this day, and so it has been growing and is growing toward the last day when it will be dispersed. This is that last judgment he's talking about. But in most ancient times, it was not so. This is not how life is supposed to be. We're not supposed to be fighting our consciousness. It's not supposed to be that we have to keep our negative self in check, that humanity is constantly trying to push back the worst impulses that we have. And that if it's ever, think about it on a human race scale, that if a region of the world is somehow like financially demoralized, it becomes impoverished, there's almost always people rise up and take advantage of that and start killing a lot of people. There's just like this negative, horrific behavior just waiting to come in. And you see this with the richest areas in the world as well, of course. I'm just trying to say that in individuals, why are we always having to fight negativity? Why is evil always knocking on the door like, can I come in now? And as soon as we've got any kind of weakened resistance, it's moving through. Mob mentality. Why is all that happening? It shouldn't be like that. And it wasn't always like that. That is not meant to be the default that we push back against. It's evil. Evil is an alien thing. Evil is not something that we want done to us, and it really doesn't hold up to scrutiny as anything worth pursuing. So it's strange that it's so instinctual to us. And it's not because it's not how it really is. It's not how it was. It's also because of this field that revelations cannot come forth today as they did in ancient times, except by an extraordinary way, and that there is no such communication with heaven as there once was. There's also supposed to be, there used to be a time when we're sitting here pondering, is there even a life after death? Is there even a divine being? Are there spirits? With spirits being us when we have shed the body when we're dead, but still conscious, just in the level that your mind is already actually sourced from. But back in the day, you didn't have to think about that. And maybe it's true. You regularly had contact with that reality. But why isn't it like that anymore? It's because the field is messed up. It's not just because we lost our privileges. It's not a punitive thing. It's not just, well, you don't need that anymore. The very mechanism by which that connection was maintained has been polluted, and we're starting to see this. You can see it. You mess up the way that a watershed works, when you're flushing all this stuff through the river, the fish can't live in the river. That's just how it is. For a period of some hours, I was shown how the collective field operates in the human minds. And in fact, when it was allowed, how I was not in the least able to stop them from taking away my thought and from prevailing. Such is the strength of that field today, when spirits are given the power to act. We don't know exactly when this is, but this can actually pull your thoughts. This is how intimately the spiritual world is connected to our thinking. And what else is this field doing for us? Or what does it do when this field is messed up? Because even if it is better now, as he seems to be indicating, what effect does that have on the psyche, and what do we maybe still need to clean up about it? The whole field utterly opposes the angels' endeavors, and the power of the angels, who all belong to God the Messiah, is increased so that they are able to overcome. So you have to, let's get some cleanup here. There's got to be some of this still going on, because even when we're in the throes of this, don't we say, like, I need some help. Is anyone there? And sometimes you feel it, but other times you don't. And it could well be that, heaven's here. And they're trying to. It's not that there's not a lack of love or effort. It's just the channels have been disrupted. That really how it should be is that we get the reassurance whenever we need it about whatever we need it. Okay, and here we get to what kind of people is this? What kind of mindset is this? And is this appropriate for the kids? Astounding things would emerge if I should tell what filthy objects they portray when they are allowed to work by fantasies. So if the spirits get to say what they want to say, but spirits can talk through imagery as well as the rudiment or the root or the essence of language, which I would rather pass by because it would be shocking to tell. they are nothing less than filthy. So whatever he saw, he's saying, look, these people are gross. The things they're trying to focus on and talk about, I don't even want to write it. And he writes some pretty intense stuff later, so it could be that he's just not ready to write that now, or it could be that there's certain things they say that we just, we can't put that on the air. Angels of the lowest level can also be in that realm. This, again, is this early Swedenborg description. And because they are governed by the heaven of angels, they cannot be hurt at all. In there, gives us a little glimmer of hope is what do you do if you're talking about large-scale psychological pollution? Enough people, this sort of stuff, filthy, negative stuff. People, how does that become pollution? Well, everybody who loves that, participates in it, and eventually you die and you continue to love and participate in the same things, that adds to the pollution, because that puts an impact into the world. You have it in your heart and mind, you act on it, that creates, that codifies this stuff and pushes it out. So what do? It's just like if the air is polluted and you got to breathe all the time, well, there are ways. There's almost like a little breathing mask or a little air purifier that we can have, because here we're saying, even if you're in that space, angels in that space, because they're governed by heaven, can't be hurt at all. That's the point of all this stuff we're trying to learn here, is to figure out, how do you be governed by heaven? What does that mean? What actions is that? What mental exercises is that? What choices is that? And if the more that we're able to, even if we're saying the collective field has all these problems, we can build this little clean air zone in here. That it is possible on an individual level. You have to work much harder because you're working against the collective field, but we can get it to the point where this stuff is getting cleaned up enough that we can be, I would say we as well, can be, at least to an extent, governed by heaven rather than be at the whims of the collective field. A fact I have found noteworthy was that at times I have heard a spirit speaking with me, and he was abruptly removed. Now I've been allowed to learn that he was snatched away by the collective field. That's so intense. That is, compelled to speak in accord with the field's action. Okay, that's interesting, because sure, this imagery is very bizarre. So just even Swedenborg speaking with a spirit. And if you go back and read some of his earlier writings, it was really weird to him at the time. But once it became normal, I guess like it would become normal if, let's say, germs were just discovered, and you just had this idea that there are a ton of teeny animals living inside me and living inside my skin and my bone marrow, and that they like grow in population and shrink, and that's why I feel sick. Eventually, who cares? Yeah, it's germs. So to him, this is weird that not only are there people around here in the physical world, but there are spiritual people that I'm interacting with. Eventually, it became normal enough that he can then make observations and say, look what this is telling me about spiritual world in general. So it's bizarre imagery, but once you get past that, you have this spirit who's talking to you and then gets snatched away by the collective field. That is, compelled to speak in accord with the field's action. Do we see that in the world? That you have people who you think that these people would be good people, but are under the sway of this larger thought current that is pulling them into some form of antisocial behavior. I certainly feel like I see that, where it's people who are vulnerable to being persuaded, and they just can't resist this targeted messaging that goes at them and pulls them into it. So it is, there are these sort of outreach efforts from this field to force us into everything that's negative and limited and detrimental versus what we could be if we were allowed a little more breathing room. I observe still more things that have slipped from my memory, for that field takes away whatever truth and goodness they find to be the most unpleasant. Because the way that the negativity in our mind is that it can't stand the presence of something good. It feels unpleasant to them, like negativity feels unpleasant to us. And if you think about going back to the curious case of having a mind, does it ever feel like, man, as soon as anything good, as soon as I'm happy about anything, all these reasons pop up to discount that. Like, so if I am struggling with all this negative thinking about myself, and then I remember something good about myself, or I come up with some reason, well, actually, I'm okay, I'm all right. And they say, well, but that you're not thinking of this, and well, that was just there's these it's like, it's so blatantly obvious that your mind is trying to remove that positive thought because something there that's not part of its homeostasis. It can't live happily in that environment. And here Swedenborg is saying, look, the spiritual pollution doesn't want you have it feeds on your unhappiness. And so this is why there's this bizarre situation where it feels as if the mind itself is working as hard as possible to keep us in a state of anxiety and low-level despair all the time. But if God the Messiah sees fit, I will speak more fully elsewhere about this collective field in general and in details. Okay, and we're speaking about it more right now. The collective field can be compared with the ethereal atmosphere in that this conveys to the eye the individual objects, like those on streets and in the countryside, in all the details of their forms and shapes. Indeed, to 1,000 eyes at the same time, or even tens of thousands. And in this way, to each of a person's thoughts, reasonings, and fantasies individually. The comparison is valid for the collective field lies inside of nature. And now we're getting more of a sense of it as a part of the mechanism of consciousness. So if you're picturing there, let's stick with our air pollution metaphor since he continues to harp on this air correspondence. If you think about air being the medium by which, or he says, sorry, I should say ethereal atmosphere. I don't know if he's talking about air as in oxygen and the molecules of fill. Whatever it is that, allows you to see. Well, the reason I'm thinking it holds up is if there's smog, if we are in an area that's smoggy and very smoggy, and you try to look out your window, what you see is drastically affected by that. Your ability to see in the distance, your ability to perceive objects as they actually are, is drastically reduced compared to if the atmosphere was clear and you can make out more detail and you can see farther, right? So that atmosphere makes it more difficult to correctly observe things. Well, spiritually, the spiritual equivalent to observation is understanding. So if the mechanism by which we're meant to, the medium by which we're meant to understand things, this sort of spiritual atmosphere, if that's polluted, that corrupts the way we understand everything that comes into our mind. That's the issue with having this thing messed up. Each of a person's thoughts, reasonings, and fantasies individually. So because the very medium by which we are able to contemplate realities or things contemplate ideas or what we believe to be perceptions of realities is compromised, that just downgrades our ability to think about anything, let alone draw the right conclusions that will lead to the right actions. That's the problem with the collective energy field being messed up. And where I see this as useful is just to understand, okay, when I'm working against, this negativity here. And it may be that it's compromised my ability to see things, but like if we know that, we can take that into account. We can know when I'm standing here trying to look and I can't see those mountains because there's too much smog in between. It doesn't mean they're not there. It's just you have to get closer to them to see them. So similarly, when I'm sitting here and I'm in despair about whether I have any value or whether life has gone well or will go well, just because I can't see that value or can't see that plan doesn't mean it's not there. I just know, well, it could be right there. You just can't see it. So the reaction to the understanding we do get can be different. And to just know this isn't how it's supposed to be, and it's going to get better. There's going to continue to be ways we can clear that air, we can change our habits, and just think about how nice it'll be when that sun comes out and there's this blue sky and we really see things how they are. The machine works how it's supposed to. We're not going to have to fight our own minds forever. And that's the news from heaven. How'd you like it? What are you going to do with this knowledge of the collective energy field of spirits to go out and live a better life day to day? Let me know in the comments. We would love to hear from you. Like and subscribe. Helps us out as well. And do you want to dive more deeply into this stuff? We are doing a weekend-long retreat where we can come and take an idea or a concept that we think is helpful, look at it from all angles. This is the Off the Left Eye experience. You can sign up. It's next summer. It's coming up fast. Get your tickets now before they are all gone. We'd love to see you and really take a chance to get this stuff imprinted. Get it so that we're reflexively thinking in these ways, because hopefully that will make it easier to navigate the world we're in and be more and more of a beacon to everyone else. Like, that's the point, is to go from what's not so good to what's good. What a profound note to end on. All right, thanks so much.